I think some advice that I've gotten that I'm not particularly good at, but it definitely works. So I'm personally trying a lot to improve on it. Is just like how far confidence will take you, especially with these interviews. I think I go into my interviews, especially when I first started giving more interviews on the marketing side. I went into them so underconfident because I felt so insecure about the fact that I don't have a marketing background. I don't have a marketing education. And so I don't think I sold myself very well to the interviewers because I don't think I believed in myself. I was like, yeah, all I have is social media. And maybe that interviewer thought it was really cool that I had social media, but I didn't believe in it. So it didn't go well for me. But in some of the more successful interviews that I've had and, going to final rounds and things like that, I've noticed it's because I was confident. I think being able to sell yourself is really important. That's one of the biggest pieces of advice that I think I've gotten that I've really seen in real-time work. If you can sell yourself to the interviewer, you can get that job. Like all you have to do is be able to be really confident in what you're talking about and just show them that I believe this works and I know it works and I know it'll work for you. And then it works out.
Welcome to the Improving Humans podcast, where improving humans share their stories, experiences, and lessons to help others improve. Today I'm joined by Shevya Awasthi. Shevya is a graduate of both the University of California, Berkeley and NYU with an undergrad degree in immunology and a master's degree in public health, respectively. In fact, in July of 2024, she released a thrilling paper on upper respiratory streptococcus pneumonia colonization among working age adults with prevalent exposure to overcrowding.
Did your research?
It was a thrilling read. Yet, despite those years of school for science, today she's bravely embarking on following her passion for social media marketing and content creation in a professional capacity. Shevya, I'm very excited to sit down with you today because I think, the journey that you're going on right now is something that a lot of people in our generation have at least thought about, and some of us have actually embarked upon. So joining you mid-journey as you're searching for a new job, a new career, is super exciting. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. So I liked biology a lot in high school. Like I did AP Bio, and there was particularly a chapter of AP Bio that I really liked, which was immunology. So going into college, Berkeley was the only school that offered immunology as its own separate major, which is what I was really excited about Berkeley. So that's where I went. And going in, it's so funny. So my mom was like, oh, you're doing a science major. And then classic, like all brown parents, she was like, be a doctor. And so again, I had no aspirations. I had no idea what I wanted to be. So I was like, okay, I'll be a doctor. So like one semester into Berkeley, I was like, it's not happening. I don't think I can be a doctor. I was like, I don't think this is for me. So then I switched and I was like, okay, like if I have this science degree, what else can I do with it? I was like, okay, let me do a PhD. So then I went through the rest of my undergrad career thinking that, okay, maybe I'll be a PhD. And then I graduated and I took 2 gap years to kind of just work in a lab at Berkeley. And then while in that lab and actually working with bacteria constantly in front of me, I was like, I do not love bacteria enough to do this for the next 5 years. I was like, this is not happening.
No?
No. So then I was like, I gotta get a master's. And then I was like, if I can't just have like a master's in a life science degree, because usually those are very like transitory degrees. Like you don't just get a job after that. People usually get that like on their way to med school or like on their way to a PhD. So a really professional master's degree that you can get with like a science background is a master's of public health. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to get an MPH. And then during my 2 gap years when I was doing research in a lab at Berkeley, that's when I started exploring on TikTok and I started posting on Instagram and getting more into music. That's also when I started songwriting. So I started to get a lot more creative and I started to put a lot of my creativity out there. So at that point, I wasn't like, oh, like I'm definitely pursuing a creative career or anything, but it was something that I really enjoyed and it was getting a little more serious. So after those gap years, and then I came to NYU to do my MPH, I would say maybe a year into my MPH, I kind of started to get the feeling of, not like, oh, I regret doing my science degrees, but I was like, I don't really like what I'm doing, and I'm not passionate about what I'm doing. Like, I can do it. If I wanted to pick up right now and go get a science job, like I could, hopefully somewhere in this job market, get a science job, but I don't think I'd be happy doing it. I'd be really like, I don't know how to explain it. Like it doesn't get me excited essentially. So I kind of realized that 1 year into my MPH, but I've also dedicated now I've done half my MPH. So I was like, I can't just like stop it now. So I finished my degree when I was graduating from my MPH, I didn't feel good at all. It felt very like, how do I say this? Like, it was like an out of body experience. Like, I was just like sitting there and I just kept thinking and looking around like, what am I doing here? I didn't feel good. I didn't feel proud. I think a lot of people around me were just also so passionate about public health and so happy to be there and like excited to, maybe go work for the Department of Health or go work at a public health startup or like do things like that. Like people wanted to, go to Africa and, like implement tuberculosis, like, therapy over there and things like that. And like, I was just kind of sitting there to myself and I was like, I want to do music. And I was like, I want to do music. I want to do something completely different. And I was just sitting there thinking that like, I'm not like any of my other peers right now. The speech that this guy on stage is giving me means nothing to me. Like, I don't relate to this on any means. I like, in hindsight, I'm like, I spent a lot on this degree and I did it, but I don't know. Like, I was just sitting there and I was like, I don't feel good. I feel very like I'm not in the right place right now. And so I had that feeling. I graduated. I honestly just, that whole week of graduation, I just wanted it to be over. Like I was just waiting to like not have to discuss my degree anymore. And then I compartmentalized it because we had to record the Nasha music video. So I just got busy, deep dived. Wow, that's crazy. After that, then I went back to the job market and I still was trying to look for science jobs. And it wasn't really until maybe like a couple months ago that I really just sat down with myself and I was like, I don't even think I'm applying to these jobs with like all of my full, effort and intention. Like I don't like what I'm doing. I don't like these job descriptions don't excite me. The work doesn't like get me like, hyped about what I'm going to do. So I really sat with myself and I was like, okay, I don't think you like this. But while I was, doing my gap years and my MPH, I was also doing social media on TikTok and Instagram, growing my music page. And so I really thought about how I view that and how much more excited I get about marketing and marketing myself and creating content than I do, like my MPH or my undergrad degree. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I can try that as a career. So
in that moment when you go through the reassessment phase, is that something that you're just keeping to yourself? You're like, I'm going to figure this out myself? Or is there a support group or people that you actually begin to talk to of like, hey, I'm thinking of doing this? Like, do you start opening up to it about people or do you just keep it to yourself for the time being?
I really struggled with that, actually. It's funny you bring that up. I, for a long time, was like, this is really embarrassing, so I don't want to tell anybody. The only people that I did first open up to were my parents because I was like, you kind of have to know what jobs I'm applying for.
Did you call your parents or did you have a sit-down conversation?
No, I had to sit down with them.
Okay, so the 5 seconds before when you're sitting down in your chair and you're about to tell them what you're about to tell them, I mean, yeah. What's coursing through your veins? What are you feeling when you're sitting down with them?
Honestly, I was very nervous. Very, very nervous. And I was also just thinking, I was like, I know they're going to make a comment about how they spent $200K on my tuition and I'm changing my degree, like my topic. They thankfully did not bring that up. They were very open about it. And they also were, I think that they really have been watching me struggle with this job market and trying to find a job. And so I think they knew that how much I was struggling to even come and open up to them about this. So they were very gracious in talking about it. And I was very nervous that they were definitely going to be bringing up my degree and how much I spent on it. But they surprisingly were like, your skills that you learned from your degree are transferable to like everywhere. Like your detail orientedness and creativity in science and how you write, like that's things you apply to marketing as well. Like it transfers. So they were very, very gracious and very kind. We definitely have talked about my degree and how much money was spent on it, but
in that specific moment, like
in that one moment when I was opening up to them, they were very, very understanding and very empathetic. And I feel like one of the things I've really learned is that sometimes college and doing this like education and things like that is just a lesson in what not to do, like I feel like my entire educational experience has just been me trying things and me learning, oh, this was not for me, and then I finally, in terms of doing social media, realized, oh, this is for me. So sometimes it's a little bit more of an expensive route, but we get there. I'm very privileged to have parents who were able to pay for both of my degrees, and of course, now when I get a job, a lot of it's going to be spent towards also paying them back and, making sure I make up for the 200K that I spent.
Yeah, I would even argue to say what's more invaluable than the money that they spent on your degrees is the fact that when you sat down with them, like, it didn't turn into a fight, or it didn't turn into like them making you feel guilty. Because I think there's a lot of people that I've personally talked to, and just in my own experience as well, where you sit down with your parents and it goes completely left when they're supposed to be your support system, right? So I think even more valuable than that is, like, at least the initial support for being able to pursue what you want to pursue. Not saying you wouldn't have still pushed ahead and did what you needed to do. But I think that's really beautiful, and that's awesome your parents were there for you like that.
Yeah, no, I'm very, very grateful. I think, one, having my social media and having that proof for them that I do know what I'm doing was very helpful in that conversation, because they didn't know I was just, like, pulling it out of thin air, like, they were like, okay, she has the proof to back it up. And then also my dad having a very similar experience, I think, made him very empathetic. That, I think he's just done it. He's entirely switched from commerce straight to computer science, and, like, he didn't have any actual education in that. So I think he really related to where I was coming from.
Yeah, makes sense.
In terms of, like, telling my friends and things like that, I definitely held off for a bit. I would say maybe in, like, end of July is when I had kind of made the decision that I think I need to switch. And then I don't think I really told my friends until maybe, like, the end of August. I actually really only opened up to Doyle about it and just, like, explained what I was kind of thinking. And then in terms of my other friends, like, I obviously did, like, they all know, everyone knows what's up now, but it was more just one of those things where I was like, it's not like I don't want to tell them, like, they won't judge me, they'll be supportive, of course, they're like my best friends.
Yeah.
But I just, like, couldn't get myself to talk about it. I just kept thinking about, like, they just watched me in New York go through a 2-year MPH program, only doing science all the time, publishing some paper, talking about my thesis, complaining about, whatever, and I'm about to drop a bomb on them and be like, hey, actually, I'm gonna do social media. Like, they're gonna think I'm crazy. So, yeah, I struggled with that, but I did get around to opening up and telling them, and everyone's been very, very supportive and very helpful. They've been my biggest cheerleaders through all this in terms of connecting me to people they know in marketing and helping me kind of talk to people and looking over my resume and seeing my creative portfolio and just, giving me advice. So in hindsight, I'm very, very grateful I opened up to them.
And the interesting thing about marketing is, to some respect, maybe similar to music, correct me if I'm wrong, is there's audience approval on the other side. Obviously, you can be making music for yourself, and that's great, but when you release it to the world, it's subject to sort of approval from other people.
Yeah.
When you're marketing yourself, semi-similar occurrence. So how do you begin to understand audience behavior in that sense? Like, how are you able to market stuff that actually works, that things that go viral, whether it's from, like, a marketing tactic? Like, how do you begin to understand audience behavior?
Yeah. I would say it was initially a lot of trial and error, just kind of, like, posting things and then just seeing how they do. I think it came a little bit naturally, thankfully, because I think with TikTok, there's always a lot of trends that are happening. And so what I started to realize is that if I take trends and I capitalize on them and not just hop on the same trend that everybody else is doing, but make it unique to me, that's how I can reach bigger audiences while still showing them what I bring to the table. So, like, for example, there was a time when Olivia Rodrigo's driver's license was going massively viral on TikTok. Everyone and their mom was singing it. So I could have, because I'm a singer, just sung the song to the camera, covered it, and I'm sure I would have done okay. But instead, what I did was I took the song and I wanted to show people that I'm a singer-songwriter and I make my music in Hindi. So I took that song, I decided to make the Hindi version of it, where I made my own lyrics, I made the Hindi version of Driver's License, and I posted it, and it went quite viral for the amount of followers I had at the time. I gained like a good 40 or 50K of my TikTok followers from that one video, because it did exactly, from a marketing perspective, what it was supposed to do. It capitalized on a trend, but it also made it unique and showed people what I can do. And that's how people came to know, like, me and, like, what kind of music I make, and, like, after that, Auna got more streams because people started to recognize that, oh, she's a singer-songwriter. And so I kind of just learned that trick, and I started to apply that again and again.
And are you still trying and, experimenting with how you're doing marketing, or have you found a formula you think that works for your music?
I think one thing I've learned with marketing is that there's never really one set formula for how I choose to market myself. I think it's very much dependent on what's trending, and also B, like, how my audience is currently feeling. I've noticed that some people can post every single day and they'll get that kind of engagement every single day. I feel like that's not how it is for my social media. If I post every day, I think my followers tend to get a little bit burnt out. I think my posts tend to get a little bit swallowed up by, the FYP or whatever it is on Reels. So I think for me, I don't stick to just one marketing strategy. I think a lot of it is just, actually, one of the things I very commonly do is I post on my story a lot and I just ask my followers, what do you want to see next? And then I kind of just listen to what they want and then give that to the best of my ability. And then also just following the trends, understanding kind of what's relevant right now, and then adjusting based off of that. Like even right now, like before I used to just post my song and then I would kind of lip sync to it, and then I started creating more like interesting intros and posting it. Now I'm creating an iPop playlist and promoting that, and that's promoting my music. Like I think when it comes to especially music promotion, like I never want to bore my audience. If I'm gonna promote my song to you, I'm gonna make you have fun while you watch my video. I think that's one of my biggest goals. So yeah, I don't really stick to one method. I kind of always try to change it up.
I want to talk about the steps that you actually took to sort of make those pivots. So, immediately, how did you even start going about, okay, I'm going to start applying this stuff? Like, what are some things you had to figure out? What research did you do? What went into that process?
Yeah, great question, because a lot went into it. So like I had my resume, and my resume was all science. Like my degrees, my research, everything that I did was like all science related. So I was like, this is not going to do. I can't apply to creative jobs with a science resume. So I revamped my resume. I actually, so in between when I was working in my 2 gap years, and I was like between that time and when I started my MPH. So I was working in that laboratory until February of 2022, and I started my MPH in August of 2022. So there was that gap of like a couple months. And so in that time, I was like, I should just get a job for a bit and just, make a little bit so I can save up a little bit to then go into my MPH. So at that time, my friends were like, you have your social media, why don't you just get a job in social media? And so one of my friends at that time had gone into Canva and helped me make like a social media resume. So I had this like super, super bare bones resume from like 2 years ago, like sitting on my computer. And so I was like, why don't I go into Canva and I revamped that? So I made a whole new resume, updated my like picture and all that stuff. I like made like a really like nice, pretty resume in Canva. And then after that, a slightly intimidating step, but I actually updated my LinkedIn. My LinkedIn was all science, and you know how like your LinkedIn profile is, like, like all your different jobs and like your skills and everything. And so I changed everything. I changed my bio. I changed like the little, like, how it's like, like UC Berkeley grad. I was like content creator. I like changed everything. I put in all of my social media experience onto my LinkedIn, which feels weird because I had never really treated social media as like a job or like as a work experience. It was just like my hobby that I was doing. So to go and put that on LinkedIn felt like more real than my resume. Like I was like, oh my God, it like looks like it's like an actual work experience. So I put my social media on there. I put DST on there, and I put this other project I was doing for NYU that actually turned out to be some level of marketing to it. So I put that on there as well. So I revamped my full LinkedIn, and me revamping my full LinkedIn was really me committing to, I'm going to start applying to these jobs, because I think one of the first things that recruiters do on top of your resume is go and look at your LinkedIn profile. So for a while I was like, let me just keep the science background on my LinkedIn, but then have a creative resume and then just see if like I can do both at the same time. But like you can't, like it's weird. Like a recruiter can't be looking at a creative resume and then go to your LinkedIn and it's like research experience. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So changing my LinkedIn was really me like committing, like, okay, we're doing this. We're full sending it. We're going to apply to these, creative marketing jobs. So I updated my LinkedIn. And the last thing I did was, a lot of people gave me advice to network and message as many people as you can on LinkedIn. And so I networked within my own connection of people, just other people I know on social media who also have marketing background. I networked with you. I tried to message basically as many people as I could, just to either ask for advice, ask them if, they had any openings in their companies, or have them look at my resume. I had you look at my creative portfolio. Oh yeah, and that was the last thing I did, was I created a creative portfolio. I really tried for a while to not make one and just kind of let my social media be my portfolio, because my social media has everything. Like, right. It has all my videos, my music video, like everything.
Yeah.
So I was like, all it takes is one click and you just go to my Instagram, you can see everything I'm capable of.
Yeah.
But I kind of realized that these jobs like to have it really spelled out for them, that like, look at this video, I made this decision because of this reason, and this garnered me this many views, and this created this many followers. And so I was like, I think I might need to finally make a portfolio. So then I went, and my last step was I made a portfolio and really explained all like my different projects. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm sure there'll be some level of new learning I have to do. Maybe I'll have to take another course or something, but we keep learning and evolving. But at the moment, these are the steps I've taken.
That makes sense. And I would love to talk about sort of the networking piece, because I think that's somewhat underrated in a sense in terms of how you can get opportunities or advice, like you said.
Yeah.
So was your network just you went through your contact list on your phone and thought who you knew, or like did you also leverage, your social media and whoever you knew there? Like how did you go about networking on your end?
Yeah, when I first started networking was just like, who do I know in marketing? Like, who can I think of? And so I thought of a couple people and I was like, okay. And so I either DM'd them on Instagram or I texted them and I was just like, look, here's the situation, okay? I'm not doing science anymore. I really want to do social media. Can you give me some advice, or what are your thoughts? Do you think I'm capable of this? And kind of just asked a lot of people for their thoughts. And then they usually would tell me, like, actually, why don't you go talk to this person? Or in general, also, like when I told my friends that, oh, I'm switching into, I think, marketing, they also were like, hey, I have a friend who's in marketing. You should talk to this person. So people would either give me their connects or I would talk to them because, they were in marketing and they'd be like, actually, why don't you talk to my colleague? Or, like things like that. So also a lot of it was just cold messaging people from companies that I really liked. Like I'm a really, really big fan of Duolingo's marketing. And so I really wanted to talk to someone from Duolingo. So I just connected with literally anyone who'd be willing on LinkedIn and then was like, okay, like, let me just ask them like what their experience is.
So I wanted to know how you've tried to maybe differentiate yourself in the job search. So I know like you're differentiated in a sense where your background is definitely unique and some of the things you've done in branding your own self is unique. But is there anything else you've tried to do to sort of stand above the crowd in terms of how you're just promoting yourself or how you're sort of going about your job search or even interviews?
Maybe making DST kind of helped me differentiate a bit, because DST is the first thing where I'm not necessarily marketing for myself. I'm marketing for a brand that I've created, but it's not me. It's the brand. So being able to show people that, one, I created this, and two, I put in the work to, like find the venue and talk to other people and get the artists and then market those artists, market DST, like do all of this stuff, I think has been quite helpful. I've noticed in the interviews that I've done so far, people have been quite invested in learning more about DST, actually more than my own personal background. So, but yeah, I would say the most feedback I've gotten from these interviews is that they've been quite happy with my social media background, and that's been enough for them to actually even want to interview me in the first place, which has been pretty cool.
Makes sense. And can you give, like, for anyone who doesn't know what DST is, just a little bit of context on like what you're putting together?
Yes, so it's called Desi Standard Time, and it's a concert series dedicated towards showcasing South Asian independent talent. We're currently only in New York City, but we're hoping to expand, maybe to LA. But basically, yeah, what we do is we partner with the Sultan Room, and we put on shows generally about twice a year. So our next one is December 14th. And basically, yeah, the organization was created because of a show that I did last year in September, and it did quite well. And so the Sultan Room asked us that, why don't we make this a recurring thing? And then I was like, if we're going to make it recurring, I'm not going to perform every time. So let's just have this be like a platform for other artists to be able to come showcase their talent. And so it's kind of just snowballed into this bigger thing. And yeah, that's where we're at now. It's my little organization.
What's been, I would say, a good piece of advice you've gotten along the way? It could be maybe some you gave yourself or something that you got from someone else, your parents, your friends, etc. In terms of that's helped you either from interviews, in the job search, even just mentally going through this process. Like, what's some advice that you've, taken?
I think some advice that I've gotten that I'm not particularly good at, but it definitely works. So I'm personally trying a lot to improve on it, is just like how far confidence will take you. Especially with these interviews, I think I go into my interviews, especially when I first started giving more interviews on the marketing side, I went into them so underconfident because I felt so insecure about the fact that I don't have a marketing background. I don't have a marketing education. And so I don't think I sold myself very well to the interviewers because I don't think I believed in myself. I was like, yeah, all I have is social media. And maybe that interviewer thought it was really cool that I had social media, but I didn't believe in it. So it didn't go well for me. But in some of the more successful interviews that I've had and, going to final rounds and things like that, I've noticed it's because I was confident, I think being able to sell yourself is really important. That's one of the biggest pieces of advice that I think I've gotten, that I've really seen in real time work. If you can sell yourself to the interviewer, you can get that job. Like, all you have to do is be able to be really confident in what you're talking about and just show them that I believe this works and I know it works and I know it'll work for you. And then it works out.
Is there anything that you've learned in the process that you think might be helpful for someone else? Let's say someone else is in your shoes in terms of they may not have your specific social media background, but they're looking to transition into something else, and you've taken steps, obviously, updating your resume, portfolio, etc. But is there any really takeaways that you've seen that may be transferable elsewhere for someone else if they wanted to switch or pivot in their career?
I think the one thing that I think is probably transferable everywhere, aside from, of course, updating your resume and all that stuff, was probably just the networking. The networking, like, of course, yeah, I had a couple things I didn't want to hear. Maybe some of the calls didn't go as well as I wanted to, but some of the networking I have done has been, like, absolutely pivotal and has really helped me a lot. Like, even, like, this advice I got about, like, confidence and things like that, I got that through networking and talking to someone who was, like, telling me that you need to sell yourself to the interviewer and things like that. So reaching out to people who are in this field, who know what they're doing and who've done well in this field, people who are open to talking to you, and just being in that space, I think really, really helped me. And I think also really helped me then, on top of that, fix my resume, add this creative portfolio in, and like things like that. Like, I just think getting that advice from people who are already in the field that you want was really, really helpful for me. So I guess if people are trying to pivot right now into different careers, I would say network a lot. It works.
That makes sense. And I kind of want to get into something that may be a bit tough to describe because it has to do with sort of a range of emotions, but having gone through the job process personally, and I'm sure everyone can relate to this in some sense, the range of emotions you experience when you go through a job search are probably maybe some highs, a lot of lows. Sometimes it feels like, can you just, as best as you can, just describe sort of the range of emotions of everything you felt going through this entire job search?
I'll give you a story. It's a heartbreaking story. So basically, I made the pivot to switch into marketing end of August. And I left for Europe September 17th. So there's this 2-week gap. I started making the switch, and then I left September 17th. In that time, I was like changing my resume. I, updated my LinkedIn, and I started applying to jobs. And I got an interview. And I got the interview, and I did well. I got second round, I did well. I got the final round, I did well. And then the recruiter told me, you're the top candidate for this. And then I was like, great. And I didn't hear back for a week. And my goal was that I really wanted to get something before going to Europe, because I was like, I just want to go to Europe in peace. I want to spend money in peace. I don't want to worry about a job. I don't want to be recruiting while I'm in Europe. Like, I don't want to deal with it. So finally, I'm in Europe, and this recruiter has told me that you'll hear back by Thursday. And so I was like, cool. So I'm in Europe, and now it's Thursday, and I'm like, okay, I'm probably going to hear back today. And I've been told that I'm the top candidate for this. So I was like, this is going to be great. Like, I was kind of like preemptively partying, because I was like, okay, like, like it worked out. I wanted to get a job in marketing. I got it. I did well. And then I got the email, and he was like, sorry, due to, a change in scope, because, obviously the job market's sucks right now. He was like, yeah, we're closing the position, so, but it's not because of you. You were a great candidate, we really like you, whatever. So love that recruiter there. He was great, and all that was fine. But that like high of being told you're the top candidate and thinking that all my problems are solved, and like, okay, I got a job in marketing, like everything's gonna be okay, and then just gone in an instant. They're like, oh, sorry, the job doesn't exist anymore. And then I was like right back to square one. I was like, I don't have any other interviews lined up. Now I need to go back to, finding more interviews and seeing if someone else would be interested in me. And so a lot of this job search has just been that. It's been like the highs of like, okay, I got an interview. Okay, it went well. Just kidding, they don't want to interview me again. Or, okay, I got a final offer. Oh, the job closed. And it's just, I think it's a product of, one, the market being really bad right now. And two, I think this is just how job recruiting is. So a lot of highs, a lot of lows, and I felt all of it.
you're sort of living in this, I would say, short-term thing right now where you're going through a transition. It's going to be difficult, especially at times when you have those disappointing moments. But I'm curious if you've ever looked at your life ahead. So if you've looked at maybe a decade from now, 2 decades from now, could be shorter than that. But looking at, where you're going to be once you finally get a job in marketing, like, how does that feeling feel? Have you reflected back on, like, I'm excited about where my life trajectory is going now?
Mm-hmm. So I think at the end of the day, my ultimate goal is music and being, a singer-songwriter. Of course, I'm in this job hunt right now because I need money to support that dream. But I think the reason why I made the pivot into doing something in social media and being on the creative side, aside from it also just, being something I enjoy a lot more than science, was also that I just think it brings me a little bit closer to music in terms of having a creative job all day and being able to use that part of my brain. Also, I feel like the skills that I would learn from this job, I can then apply to my own music and my own page. I just feel like I'm not traveling like this, where I'm doing like science and I'm hating it, not enjoying it, doing it for 8-9 hours a day, and then having to immediately switch brains and do music, It feels like I'm a little bit closer to my musical side. So yeah, when I think about the future, I think a lot about, firstly, how I think this will make me happier because it, brings me closer to that creative side. And then also just about how hopefully one day, fingers crossed, I'll be able to do music full time, and the skills I'll have learned from, being a creative and having jobs in marketing and understanding how, consumer mindsets work and things like that, I can then apply that to, my own music career. So, and, I've also thought, like, of course, like, I don't want to think about worst case scenarios, but like, let's say I can never make music a full-time career, and let's say it never becomes, feasible. If I had to keep a job on this creative side and like in marketing or whatever, like, at least I'd still be happy. Like, I know I enjoy this work enough and I'm happy enough doing it to where, like, I think regardless of what happens, obviously, like, knock on wood, that music works out. Knock on wood. But I think either way I'd be very happy. So I feel a lot of comfort when I think that. Yeah.
That's really good perspective to have. And last thing I wanted to leave with, and I ask everyone this because podcast is called Improving Humans, and I think even outside of just the job search and sort of the career change, well, it's drastic improvements for you, and I think you're gonna be very happy when you do land something. Is there any quote, idea, or concept that you've learned over the course of your life that's really helped you improve as a person?
Yes, I'm gonna read it for you. I told you that I'd do that earlier.
Perfect.
It's from one of my favorite movies, and when I read it, you're gonna know exactly which one it is, but I'll explain after why it's my favorite. So,
Okay.
It's in Hindi.
Perfect.
कहते हैं अगर किसी चीज़ को दिल से चाहो तो पूरी कायनात उसे तुमसे मिलाने की कोशिश में लग जाती है. Which, of course, as we know, is from Om Shanti Om. But I really, really like that quote because in that movie itself, you see that, this guy is a struggling artist and he's just doing small little roles, but like, it doesn't stop him, like, at the end of the day, like, he's happy doing it because he's still doing what he loves, and he keeps dreaming about being able to really get what he wants. Of course, the trajectory of the movie's different. He dies and reincarnated and all that. I'm
Putting that aside.
Putting that aside, okay? Putting all that part of it aside. The core, point of that movie is just that if you want something really, really badly, like, it will happen. It will manifest because you're putting in the hard work for it. You're putting in the hard work, you're putting in the energy. So I think that's something that I often take comfort in when I'm in this job hunt and I'm feeling down and I'm feeling like this is not going to work out. I just keep thinking that I've put in the time, I've put in the energy, I'm going to keep putting in, I'm going to keep trying as hard as I can, and eventually I will get it. I will get my job in marketing. It will work out, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get there. And I think that's really what that point of that quote was that, if you really try your hardest, the universe will work its hardest to bring you what you want. So I really like that quote.
I love that. That's absolutely a perfect way to end this. Great advice from Shah Rukh Khan or whoever wrote the quote in the movie.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to leave off with, where can the people find you? What do you have going on? Where can people interact with you, find you, music-wise, or even DST? What's going on in your life?
Yeah, so you can find me on my Instagram and my TikTok. It's at Shev the Hev. And yeah, in terms of what's going on, I've got new music coming out. I have DST coming up. That's in December 14th. And I'm always posting content. I'm always around. I'm always happy to talk, happy to chat. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily like the greatest source in terms of if anyone's looking for a marketing job. I don't know if I would ask me, but if you're trying to make a career pivot or something like that, I very much empathize with you. So you can come talk and rant to me because I will rant right back to you.
Perfect. Well, Shevya, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for having me.